Paige Lorenz, Morgan Riddle, Ion Broomfield, and others dating tennis pros are signing up as many sponsorship deals as their romantic doubles partners. We talk with Forbes reporter Matt Craig about the lucrative social media phenomena. Hi everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis, a reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is my Forbes colleague, reporter Matt Craig. Matt, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
The U.S. Open is here, and you have some interesting reporting. You're saying that tennis players aren't the only ones reaping the benefits from sponsorship deals, but their romantic partners are as well. So can you talk to us about how these types of partnerships came to be?
Yeah, so it's kind of a tradition in tennis when you're watching the broadcast that the TV camera will always cut away to the player box and you'll see the coaches sitting there, but you'll also see the wives and the girlfriends of players. And so it's kind of become a part of tennis culture. But only recently have these wives and girlfriends really, I think, capitalized on that opportunity. And many of them already had large social media followings, and they were like, hey, what if maybe we turn this into some profit by partnering with brands who want to reach the association of sports and that kind of like excellence, aspirational quality with a mostly female audience. And they can also hit categories of products that the professional athletes themselves say would be a weird fit. So in many cases, the wives and the girlfriends of these tennis players have as many brand deals as the players themselves, especially like around the U.S. Open with some of these American girls. They're as busy or busier than the players who will be playing in the U.S. Open.
So what you're saying is they're essentially monetizing off their moment in the box, but what type of partnerships do they have? What brands are they working with? And what does the content look like that they're posting?
Right. I would say that the box and the TV moments is kind of a bonus. I think, a lot of their economics work very similarly to other influencers or online creators. And so it's a lot of things that you would normally see, when you're scrolling through Instagram or on TikTok or YouTube. It's posting with products, it's going to events and brand activations. It's recommending products that you're using for other people to use. In the case of Morgan Riddle, she's very active on YouTube with vlogs at every tournament. And one thing that is pretty unique to the tennis scene is that they're traveling all year around to these very glamorous places, whether it's Paris or London or Barcelona, Rome. And so they're kind of like have a travel influencer type content as well. And they're able to post, luxury brands because tennis has an audience that is generally pretty affluent. And so they kind of are able to use several trends of social media creation together into one. And on top of that, another very famous person might appear in the background of their content as well if they do anything with their significant other. So it's kind of a perfect storm for them to get these premium fees and compensation compared to other creators.
Let's talk about those premium fees. How much are they making per platform? And does it differ from those other creators who don't have this special connection to the sports world?
Yeah, it does. It's something that we kind of going into the story thought may be the case, and I was kind of surprised the extent to which they are considered a premium class of creator because of those things that we mentioned, the access to really cool places and the association with athletics and that excellence that I mentioned. So yeah, it kind of differs on what the deals are individually. At the lowest end, there's kind of like a pay for one post on social media, and those are called transactional deals. And for creators of the same size as the ones I was looking at, who are wives and girlfriends of tennis players, that those fees range from like $5,000 to $25,000 for a single post, and that depends on the type of brand, the category, and lots of different factors. But for these wives and girlfriends of tennis players, that range actually goes up to like between $30,000 and $60,000. So you can see it's like in an entirely different ballpark because of the benefits of the bonuses that we were talking about previously. One thing I thought was really interesting is as this class of creators has kind of proven themselves in the marketplace, they've started to move away from that transactional style pay for post model into a more like long-term partnership model, which is something that we see with the athletes themselves, where they have a smaller portfolio of brands who are trying to like really associate with that creator. Like when you think of this creator, you think of this brand, and those deals last for a year. Some of them get extended to be a couple of years, and are really like more of a true consistent partnership. Posts regularly, the expectation that they'd be wearing those brands in the box for those TV moments. And yeah, really, really more similar to what we're used to when we talk about athlete economics.
You mentioned earlier in this conversation the term aspirational. So, what specifically are some of those brands that have these longer term partnerships that are those more aspirational brands?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not necessarily revolutionary, but for a lot of these creators, wives and girlfriends, it's beauty brands. It's kind of like luxury jewelry and fashion brands. I know, like in the case of Paige Lorenz, who I talked to, it's also like Target and Dove and St. James iced tea, and so it's actually like kind of impressive, the variety of things. And one of the analysts I talked to, who really is like hooked into this space, said the difference between the professional athlete and his wife or girlfriend, who's a social media creator, is that athlete is going to have a large fan base, but it's passive engagement. And with the creators, it's like fans want to know every single thing about them. They want to know, the jewelry they're wearing, the perfume they have on, the clothes and where they got them from, and the skincare products. And so yeah, it's really kind of incredible how many different things in their life that they're able to monetize and partner with. And I think it's cool, like these kind of smaller portfolios of brands who are paying between $200,000 and $500,000 a year to kind of align themselves with that internet creator. And it becomes like kind of a part of the story, I guess, if you will, of that creator. And I think in those cases, those partnerships have paid off more than just the traditional, like, here's some money, say nice things about us on social media.
I am curious, what came first here, the relationship or the woman, the wife or girlfriend had this creator business and then they started dating the professional tennis player?
Yeah, I mean, it's case by case. I think, like Paige Lorenz told me, like it's not necessarily a huge surprise that people have either been creators who then date athletes, or are dating athlete and then become a creator, because it's a job that you can travel and do, and not only that, but the travel actually benefits it. And there is just kind of this opportunity in the marketplace. So, like for example, Paige Lorenz, who I talked about, I've been creating content for I think 5 or 6 years, and admitted that in the past 2 years since she started dating American star Tommy Paul, that has helped her relationship with brands and her income and her bottom line, basically. And so yeah, so I think it kind of varies case by case. Ian Broomfield, who I talked to, who has been dating Francis Tiafoe for several years, just at the beginning of this year, had seen what was going on with some of these other creators and decided to really take content creation seriously, and has grown a ton since then. So yeah, so I would say it's kind of case by case, but the tennis wives and girlfriends specifically with tennis, I mean, I think across sports this is a trend, but with tennis, they are kind of like having their moment, and a lot of the the opportunity and the spotlight has absolutely shined on them.
Why is that? Talk about that between sports. Are you seeing this equally across sports, where the wives and girlfriends of those famous athletes are making just as much or maybe more with partnership deals? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's happening across sports. I mean, when we think about, like, for example, Kylie Kelsey, or Aisha Curry, like we can think of examples, several of the Formula One wives and girlfriends as well, who have really blown up on social media. I would say, the male partners have the same opportunity as well. I don't want to just completely say it's a gendered thing. The thing is like, when you think of like Corday, who's is dating Naomi Osaka, the female tennis player. He has the opportunity to do it. He just hasn't like chosen to, invest his time. He's also a rapper and has his own career, right? But if he like really leaned into his social media opportunities, you could see that same kind of capitalization. But I don't know what There's a confluence of like Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift, dating, and the Beckham documentary, which put a spotlight on Victoria Beckham once again. I think with tennis, like, challengers was a big thing in the culture for kind of like tennis adjacent, like a tennis lifestyle, or as one manager put it, like this tennis core aesthetic that was kind of a fashion trend. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of different factors that have kind of created this perfect storm, so that I say applies to every sport, but tennis more than anyone else has really seen a boost in the marketplace.
Do tennis players and their partners have joint brand deals? Do they do ads together, or do they carve out their own lanes and do two separate things?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because I think like the cynical point of view on this would be, oh, like here's someone who's really just using the association with a tennis player to make these deals and to get rich. And really, that is not the case. Maybe it started that way, many years ago, but in many cases, at least the at the highest end, the people I talk to, they really have their own brands. And so, yes, in some case, a brand wants to do a joint deal with the athlete and the creator. Like, for example, Heineken just launched a campaign with Morgan Riddle and Taylor Fritz, and kind of using the appeal that, as I talked about before, that doesn't really overlap. They're associated because they're together, but their audiences are completely different. So sometimes a brand does want to work with both of them together, but in other cases, kind of in a funny way, they have different brand partnership deals in the same category. Like Ian Broomfield has always worked with Wilson back when she was a college tennis player at UCLA, and Francis Tiafoe, his apparel deal is with Nike. And those are two different brands, right? So sometimes when they appear in content together, there's kind of like the clash of like, well, I can't be seen wearing Wilson, and I can't, the other person can't be seen wearing Nike, and they have to kind of work through that. But Ian Broomfield told me specifically she was really happy that they did have separate deals, and so they kind of have their own lane, and there is kind of the respect of like, you have your career and I have mine, and of course they're intertwined, but they are somewhat separate. I know like Paige Lorenz has launched two of her own brands, so she's an entrepreneur as well as a creator. So yeah, I think these people have really carved out a career on their own.
Talk about that a little bit for us. Are they leveraging their audience, their brand deals to now then join a different business or start their own business, become entrepreneurs themselves?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a macro trend that I've seen reporting on creators for the past few years. Creators of all different categories and types, where you build this huge audience and this huge following who either, I don't know, watch you play video games or watch you, whatever your thing is on the internet. You've built hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of followers who care about you. And initially, you leverage that by getting brands who want to appeal to that same audience and will pay you to post on their behalf. But it's kind of unanimous across the board for these big creators that they want to monetize their audience directly. They're like, I understand these people better than anyone else. They like me, there's an affinity there. I want to sell directly to them with products. And so that's looked many different ways for different creators. And it depends on, again, the category. But in the case of Paige Lorenz, like she has a fashion brand that, of course, she's associated with tennis and fashion and those kind of things. So she can design products that she feels suit her audience perfectly. And I know last year she had a pop up at the U.S. Open that like 5,000 people came to. And I saw there was another one this year in Soho in New York City, and it looked like there was hundreds and hundreds of people there. So clearly, there is some method to the madness there. She also has a kind of a home and lifestyle brand as well. And so, yeah, she's seen some success with that. Ian Broomfield, on the other hand, started doing content creation to raise money to fund her foundation, so which helps young people get into athletics in Washington, D.C. area. So I think, like, people have different reasons to want to do this, but ultimately they do kind of want to build their own ventures.
It's a big moment for tennis, specifically over the next couple of weeks. It is the U.S. Open in New York. So how big of a moment is this specifically for these creators?
Yeah, this is their Super Bowl. This is like Ian Broomfield told me this. I call this my Met Gala. This is the most important time. I would say the same for the athletes. Like the major brands, the deep-pocketed American brands that a lot of these players want to get their business from. New York or the U.S. Open, these 2 weeks in New York are kind of like the most important time to kiss the babies and shake the hands and schmooze the people that you need to schmooze in those brands. But usually, like when the tennis tournament starts, those events kind of stop happening on the athlete side. Meanwhile, on the creator side, that wives and girlfriends, they're doing that all the time, right? So the tournament's going. Maybe one day they're in the box, supporting their significant other, and the next day, which is a rest day, they're running around to like 3 different events and suites and taking content and editing content, putting it out. And so yeah, in many cases they are as busy as the tennis players themselves. And it just so happens that the big people in the space are American as well. And so the US Open, obviously your audience in the United States, this is really the only or the biggest version of a tennis tournament in the United States. So yeah, the US Open is truly the 2 or 3 most important weeks on the calendar for these creators.
Matt, how important are their relationships for their business? Or are they at a point where, let's say they did break up, would they have enough audience, enough, clout of their own where they could just move on in their own business and they have this space already?
Well, it would certainly change their business because it's changing their lifestyle, right? So, like I talked about, a lot of the content that comes out is because of this traveling the world sort of thing and getting behind the scenes content and getting stuff that other people can't get. I don't doubt that the 3 that I talked to specifically have already sort of been entrenched and have these large audiences, have people that, really like them and brands that associate with them. So yeah, in the case of like at the top of the top, yeah, I do think that they would be able to still be successful, not being a tennis wags, if you will. But for some others, they are really, really benefiting from this system that's set up, that, the tennis travel and the tennis content and also the association of brands wanting to work in tennis specifically because there is that momentum behind it from customers wanting to buy tennis adjacent goods. So yeah, I think it is benefiting them and it's benefiting everyone in the system. But for those that have already built large followings, of course they are a professional content creator at this point, and that they could pivot that to many different things that they want to.
Matt Craig, I appreciate your reporting. Thanks again for coming on.
Always a pleasure, Brittany. Anytime.